Final edition, Summer Bowl Live, coming your way here. Yes, we are 11 days away from the kickoff for college football. Florida State, Georgia Tech in Ireland. Good evening. Let's go. A lot to discuss in the world of college football. Of course, this is the time we could start to hone in on those week 0 and week 1 spreads. We got some big matchups we're going to discuss. Win totals galore because Joe Tansey said so. And we got to hit on the around the college football world, including Jim Harbaugh back in it, and then says, you know what, maybe not the best idea. So we'll hit on all of that. But first and foremost, allow me to introduce top right-hand corner, Joe Tansey. Good evening, Joe.
Am I your reigning champion now? Who's you introduced Mark as the defending champion? So who's the champion of what? Am I just the champion of life?
You're the challenger tonight. That's what you are. The challenger, top right-hand corner.
Is this American Gladiators now?
That's it. That's it.
Beef,
Bottom of your screen.
Does he know what American Gladiators is, by the way? Beef?
No.
The 30 for 30 on ESPN. Oh, I love it. Ryan Beef Coyle, bottoms of your screen, the returning champion. Hello, Beef.
I liked Mark tweeted out this morning. It was like he woke up and it just felt like football. And I agreed. It was 65 degrees, I think, when I went to the car this morning. It's starting to feel like those early fall Saturdays. So ready for next Saturday to get here and kick off over in Dublin, as we've been saying. It's no better way to start off American college football than that.
I completely agree because we walked outside for a baby appointment yesterday. I go to my wife. I'm like, West Virginia and Arizona State should be playing each other right now. Yeah. I just named like 2 random schools. I'm like, okay, it's football season.
It is. It's go time. All right. Allow me to kick off this final edition of Summer Ball Live. And, of course, next week we change the name of the show and we continue to bring you great content, information, get you ready for all the matchups on a weekly basis. There's going to be a number of shows, more to be announced. However, let's get into it here. Beef put this tweet out this morning, and it got my attention. And then I know I've heard it discussed on a few different podcasts recently, including Bear. He was catching slack from an appearance that he was on from Fox Sports. And he said that the champion for this year's college football, that after it's all said and done, he said it will be between 3 teams, Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon. So we're going to open up this episode with the question, if I give you Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon, 1 ticket versus the field, which way are you going? Beef, you can open up since you put the tweet out.
Yeah, I'm for sure taking that top 3. I sent something to my friends earlier. I was like, just look at like the top 8 teams, and can you really, I think, make an argument? Because I was like, all right, I kind of want a long shot team to potentially take a shot on. Oregon, it was plus 750. I guess that was the long shot of the thing. But it was like, especially with Texas, what just happened to their backfield again today, I'm not running to place a ticket on them. And then I really think there is a pretty significant drop off, like high on Ole Miss, I think that's a, semifinals is kind of their ceiling. You look at Texas, you can make kind of the same argument there. Missouri is a team I'm high on. The U is a team I'm high on. But outside of those top 3, I don't really think so. And I wonder if any of the books are actually going to put out that prop. I think I saw they were just offering Georgia and Ohio State. I would still probably take that if you got that kind of at even money there. But, yeah, I'm definitely riding with that top 3 versus the field.
Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I think we've talked about it already this summer that I think there's 3 tiers right now. Georgia and Ohio State are in tier number 1. That's very clear. I think Oregon and Texas are in tier number 2. And then the rest of your college football playoff hopefuls, group them all together, Alabama, Ole Miss, Penn State, the list 5 to 11, seems like pretty clear in a 3rd tier until proven otherwise. Now, we've got some games in September, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Michigan, Ohio State and Oregon play in October. So we've got some games that will define the hierarchy probably much sooner than a typical season. And you can thank conference realignment for that, right? Because you wouldn't see Oregon play any of these teams. You wouldn't see Texas play any of these teams. So now you have a kind of a clear, at least we hope a clear hierarchy by the time mid-October rolls around, which is something we usually don't have. But right now, I think it's very clear. I'm taking, if you're giving me Georgia, Ohio State, or Oregon, I'm taking those three against the field. I just don't see the high championship quality coming from 4-11 right now. And I think, and like you said, Beef, with the running back injuries at Texas, that's going to be an interesting thing to follow. How they now look, it's Texas there. They can be a 5-star factory for sure. And Quinn Ewers is still the quarterback. But that is concerning that injuries are already starting to pop up with the Longhorns. But, it's a long season. They're going to happen to everybody, just no matter how you deal with it. And I think you could argue maybe happening 2 weeks before the season is better off, so they can have the replacements get those first team reps right away.
Well, we do have some versus the field odds on DraftKings Sportsbook currently. Of course, they got Georgia, 3 options. Georgia plus 300 versus the field minus 380. Georgia or Ohio State, plus 125 versus the field minus 150. Ohio State solo plus 380, the field minus 500. Anybody dabbling in the field versus Ohio State or Georgia?
I like the combo one at plus 125.
Plus 125.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I really do think those are the best two. And then there's kind of, the step down from there. Oregon might be in that own kind of second tier by itself before you get into the next kind of hodgepodge of teams that you can make the argument for. But I do think with the expanded playoff, I think people might get kind of the, March Madness feel like, oh, there could be some upset, some Cinderella. It's way more likely for that to happen in basketball, I think, than football. I think that talent gap between, the big boys at the top in football compared to basketball is a completely different argument. Because you could go into any NCAA tournament and be like, all right, 8 teams maybe have a legit shot at this. One of these teams is probably going to come out of absolute nowhere. It's not the same in football, especially with, the limited amount of games there.
And you can also, in basketball, the matchups play a huge role in these. I mean, look, the Kentucky-Oakland thing is a perfect example. Oakland got really hot from 3, and you really can't control that if you're Kentucky. It's just lightning in a bottle. When it comes to football, I mean, it's very difficult.
Because you probably got, like, Liberty playing, just say Georgia doesn't win the SEC. That's your first game.
Right.
Georgia beats them 63-0 probably.
And we saw how big the talent gap was last year. I mean, we oohed and awed about Liberty's offense the entire season. And the second they faced a big boy, because Liberty's notorious for not facing any of the big boys, they just cruise along in their schedule. And Conference USA, I think you can argue, is probably the weakest of any conference in the FBS with how everything's been restructured now. I mean, that showed. I would much rather see a team from the American or maybe the Mountain West in that 12 spot. That's not foreshadowing at all for win totals we're talking about tonight. But I think upsets are going to be a lot more scarce. But I think that's kind of stating the obvious when it comes to a football playoff. Maybe, and you can't really say 7 versus 10 or 8 versus 9 is an upset, right?
Yeah.
That's most likely going to be level playing field. Like the only true upset I think you'd see is 12 over 5, that group of 5 team, because of the disparity, especially now with NIL. And if any of the top 4 go down, especially if they're high up in these tiers that we're making preseason.
All right, another big question I have for you is Alabama. Let's talk about the Crimson Tide. Nick Saban, I believe I saw 16 straight seasons with 10-plus victories. Woo! And how about this, sports fans? 9.5 is the number. Look, you can get most numbers anywhere you want, but the plus money to the over on 9.5 right now, the win total with Alabama here. So no Nick Saban, of course, guys. We know that. But will DeBoer lead the Crimson Tide to over 9.5 in his first year, therefore continuing the streak of 10-plus victories? Joe?
It's going to be tough, right? I think that's determined in September because they go to Camp Randall to play Wisconsin, and then 2 weeks later off a bye, have Georgia come into Bryant-Denny Stadium. And I think that's kind of the determining factor of Alabama's season right there, right? Look, they can get to 10 wins even if they lose both of those games. I don't foresee it because I think they're definitely on a higher level than Wisconsin. But it's going to be tough in the SEC. And I think it's going to come down to how quickly everything comes together at Alabama. And this is something that Alabama fans aren't used to seeing, something that college football fans aren't used to seeing. I think it's going to be an adjustment process. And having those 2 games in September, man, that's tough, right? They're not easy environments. Ideally, you would like, the first 2 weeks are Western Kentucky and South Florida, which, by the way, if Alabama's not in their game, South Florida could be a tricky game as well. I mean, their quarterback was one of the best freshmen in all of college football, at least freshmen, last year. So look, there's a chance there that South Florida could at least make things frisky. I don't think they'll win, but it'll be frisky. But then if you look in the second half of the schedule, at Tennessee, Missouri comes to Tuscaloosa, and they go to LSU, which is 95% probably going to be a night game. And then they have to go to Oklahoma after their cupcake in between. It's not an easy schedule. Look, I've seen a lot easier schedules in the SEC. So it's going to be tough. They can do it, but I'm not going to sit here on August 13th and tell you to bet either way. I think you kind of have to, with Alabama, especially this year, kind of feel things out. And if they look really good on the road at Wisconsin, then I think you can have a little bit of confidence. But, how they look in terms of optics in that Georgia game is really going to depend on what the public opinion on Alabama is.
That's the 4th game of the season for Alabama. And, Joe, from that schedule, they'll probably be favored in every one except for that game against Georgia.
It depends on how it goes.
Yeah. Of course.
If they're 1 loss, not looking great, are they favored at Tennessee? I mean, look, it's dependent on how these other teams play too.
Absolutely. Beef, let me ask you this, as I have a look-ahead line right now. If I gave you Alabama plus or minus 4.5 at Tennessee on October the 19th, which way are you going right now? 4.5 Alabama favorite. It's at Tennessee.
Probably Tennessee, I'd say, at home there. But
let's go.
The thing with the Bama schedule that I while it is tough, you look at like the big boys that they're playing. Tennessee, new quarterback, a lot of talent. We still don't know what to make of it in a full season. At LSU, Nussmeier in there, step back from Daniels, probably completely new offensive system, new offensive weapons. Who knows what that looks like there? LSU's a team I think we could look back on ranked 13th to start the season. I think they could be unranked by the time that matchup potentially comes up. Oklahoma, new quarterback with Jackson Arnold. What happens there? So, like, some of these big brands, a lot of unknown with those teams. It's not like Alabama, they at least bring back Milroe, who I think is the best quarterback in the SEC. I think he's the best player, college football player at least, in the SEC. And one of the guys said it a few weeks ago.
Luther Burden would like a word for that.
You make an argument there. But he said, even though Saban leaves, the A stays the same. You're still playing Alabama. You still got to play at the end of the day. This is a play I actually took there over 9.5 wins. But Alabama's the talent didn't go anywhere. A lot of it stayed in the building. And you give me them at plus money to get to double-digit wins. I'm going to take that. DeBoer has proven time and time again to be able to win, and he's done it with a lot less talent that he's had here. So I'm going to roll with Alabama and Jalen Milroe in his second year as a starter.
All right. Let's go ahead and stay with you. What's around the league, around college football in general, as far as injuries are concerned? I saw you tweeting this morning about Texas. It seems like they're going through a little bit. As far as impactful injuries from players that haven't been able to make it through camp, is there one that jumps off the page that we should know about?
Well, I think it was like the second or third day of camp, the left tackle for Notre Dame, he tore his bicep, I believe it was, Charles Jagashaw. He was the projected starter left tackle there. And now C.J. Baxter, the projected starting running back at Texas, tore his meniscus, I believe it was. And then yesterday morning, Christian Clark, the second string running back, he tore his Achilles. So their top 2 running backs are out. And the name escapes me off the top of my head right now, but the starting running back at Texas A&M, he tore something up and is out for the season as well. Nebraska's starting left tackle out. So we have had, quite a bit of casualties so far. knock on wood, none of the quarterbacks have gone down. There was some like message boards a few weeks ago saying that Jackson Dart got hurt. Nothing came out about that ever since, but
no, it was he cheated on his girlfriend. That's what it was. He cheated on his girlfriend.
Oh, really? But yeah, those are kind of the main ones as of right now. Hopefully, knock on wood, nothing over these next 2 weeks.
All right, let's get into some more win totals here, and then we'll go ahead and take a peek at some of the premier matchups over the first 2 weeks, so 10 days of the season. Look forward to getting to those conversations. But the boys have a few win totals that they want to fire on here, get it out in the public. Let's start with you, Beef. Miami, you've been big on Cam Ward, of course, talking him up. Miami win total, where are we at, and which way are we going here?
Yeah, so I took it on Saturday. I got just over 9 at -120. I also took them to win the ACC at +400. I was looking at it today as well. I think I might just go all in on Miami and do this as well. Their over alt total wins is 10 at DraftKings at +240. So I think you look at their schedule, they're going to be favored in every game the entire season. They open on the road at Florida. They're favored there. Florida A&M, Ball State, USF. They get Virginia Tech at home, Cal, Louisville. Louisville could be, depending on how they are, maybe they're like a slight dog in that one, but they got Florida State at home, Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Syracuse. They're going to be favored most likely in all 12 games this year. For my first bet for them just to get over that 9 and get to that 10, I think that's for sure. But this is an 11-1 squad talent-wise. Does Cristobal get in there and screw it up somehow potentially? But they're going to have the best quarterback on the field every week with Cam Ward, and I'm going to give that the benefit of the doubt. So I think I'm going to take that over 10 wins as well as +240 because they do that. They're already in the ACC title game. It might be a potential hedge spot there too.
That's a tough game, Joe. Over to you, because Florida and Miami, I know that one's been discussed a lot. I saw a great breakdown by SVP.
Oh, I think Florida's already been buried in the graveyard.
Yes, that's definitely according to a few people that we've heard from. But look, that game is, if you win that game, you're probably going to think, you're back and things are going to be great and you got a long way to go, of course. But if you lose that game, man, the coach is probably the seat just even gets more hotter.
This isn't exactly a bold
1
prediction, but like that game is probably the one where the most overreactions get drawn from, win or lose, right?
Yeah.
Because if Florida wins, do we overreact and say maybe we doubted Billy Napier's ability to coach? Probably not. But this is the SEC. That's how this works. And if they lose, I mean, Napier's already been fired by half of the Florida Gator fan base. So that's just going to intensify with the schedule that they have. And then with Miami, if Miami comes out there, wins, plays really well, I mean, the hype train is just going to accelerate out of the station. But if they lose, Cristobal, I mean, how much more pressure do you need to win a big game, or does it prove that you just can't get the job done? Maybe you're just an above average coach and not an elite coach. Like, was it the right move to leave Oregon to come back home? Right. I think you maybe have a little self-doubt if you're Cristobal in that situation. I mean, that's the overreaction bowl of week 1, without a doubt, is Miami at Florida. And then, it kind of will pile on from there, because I don't think either team has a really brutal September schedule. Florida's schedule at the end is just god-awful. But, I mean, look, if Miami somehow finds a way to lose that game, I mean, this thing's going to spiral until the end of October when they play Florida State, right? It's just going to hang over their heads like a black cloud.
Well, that's definitely one of the premier matchups that we will be discussing, especially next week on the show. But really circled that one, and of course has a lot of attention with both of those squads going head to head. Looking forward to that one, but plenty of action before then. Staying with the win totals, Joe, let's head to the AAC and talk Memphis and the big, of course, AAC. Spit it out now. The realignment really shook them up. A lot of new teams, SMU out. But Memphis, your thoughts on them? Where are we going with the win total? What do you like here?
I'm 100% in on them over 9 wins. Seth Hennigan comes back to quarterback. They return both of their wide receivers. I think it's worth sprinkling on them to make the playoff. right? If you're looking at
plus 550.
plus 550, I saw them plus 700.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
when I first saw it too, it was plus 700.
Yeah.
Well, early bird gets the worm. I guess we got some movement there.
And it makes sense. Look, I think if you look at where the group of five stands, right, it's very unlikely the MAC is the group of five school in the playoff. Very unlikely. They beat each other up, and they play a lot of non-conference games against the big boys as bye games. So it's very unlikely you see an 11-1, 12-0 MAC team. Sunbelt, I don't know if the quality is there this year. JMU is going through a coaching change, and they lost a lot. Troy and App State are good. Texas State will be in the mix as well. But are they in that elite echelon of group of five teams? Not sure. Liberty is always going to hang out there, right? Because they play a cupcake schedule. They're in the weakest of the group of five. They'll be there, right? It's just kind of the inevitability of it. But when you look at Memphis, they're in the best group of five league, and I think they have a very good offense returning. I think it'll be the class of the AAC. And look, they're one of the teams I can probably guarantee will be in the mix for that 12 seed. I think it's Memphis. I think if everything comes together for Boise, they'll be in the mix out of the Mountain West. Liberty will be there just because they're gonna score 56 on everybody in Conference USA and say, here, look, we're really good. And then everybody's gonna be like, well, you might think that, but you got blown out by Oregon when you had your chance last year. Like, does that come into consideration at all? So I look at Memphis, and I think they're a veteran team with a veteran quarterback, kind of going all in on this season. So I like them at over 9, and I would definitely sprinkle on them to make the playoff, even if the numbers dropped. I think anything below +5 or above plus 500 is a good play. I think they can generate a lot of noise out of the AAC this year.
All right, Beef, let's head to the big boys and get into the SEC here. Let's talk Ole Miss. Big fan of Ole Miss. Of course, we were just talking about their quarterback with the message boards. He definitely is an attention getter. But as far as Ole Miss this season, win total coming in here on DraftKings Sportsbook, and we are looking at 9.5 to win the conference. They're 6-1 to make the playoff, -125. Where do you stand on the Running Rebels this year, Beef?
So what I think when you're looking at these SEC teams like Missouri, Ole Miss, Alabama, a lot of them are right there at 9.5. You kind of got to look at the odds because you have to think if they get to 10, they're most likely going to make the playoffs. So I'd say before you place like an over on 9.5, look at their odds to make the playoff because if they get to 10 wins in the SEC, they're going to make it. But Ole Miss is one that I just have right now because I got it at -105 to get over that 9.5, and I think it was -130 to make the playoff. So I just took them for that 10 wins. A lot of their tough matchups are at home, and you get you avoid a majority of kind of the big boys right now in the SEC. You do play Georgia, but benefit of the doubt, you get that at home. Just say even you want to chalk that up as an L. The toughest games other than that, LSU and Oklahoma, who I'm not sold on either of those teams. I think Oklahoma is going to be closer to 6-6, and they are 10-2, and I think LSU's one of the wild card teams in the sport for me this year. I'm not sure what we're going to get out of them exactly. The offensive line's really good, but I don't know how sold I am on Nussmeier. But LSU, Oklahoma, Georgia, those are the only 3 schools that are projected or that are ranked to start the year for this team. And you get Georgia at home, you get Oklahoma at home. So just say even you lose that LSU game on the road and you lose the Georgia game, you win the rest, you're getting 10 wins there. The non-con super easy. Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern should be an easy 4-0 start. And you also draw South Carolina and Mississippi State, who are going to be right there towards the bottom, I think, with Vanderbilt. And you get Florida too. Well, in that 5-game stretch for Florida, that's just murderer's row. That's 5 ranked opponents in a row, at least to start the season. So a lot of schedule draws Jackson Dart back for his third year. That's pretty unheard of in college football now, a third year starting quarterback, number one transfer portal class. They really have revamped the offensive and defensive lines over the past couple of years in the portal. So I think it's a really strong year coming for Ole Miss, and I think we could see them in the SEC title game as well. 11-1 is my projection for them.
I mean, 4 teams are making the playoff at the SEC. That's
it's just, kind of which ones beat each other up at the top is what's kind of what it's going to kind of come down to.
It's going to be Georgia, and if we think Alabama is not going to fall so far back, they're there. We've already. I mean, look, let's just get out of the way. I have Mizzou over 9.5.
I got Mizzou 11-1 as well.
Yeah, I have them to make the playoff. They have a super soft schedule. Like divisions still exist in there in the SEC East. So they're going to be in the mix. So there's your 4 right there. If things on paper go the same way throughout the season, is Georgia, Bama, Ole Miss, Mizzou. There's your 4.
What about Texas?
Texas is in there as well. So it's like
Texas is my odd man out, I think, because they're one of these teams that are heavily favored. I think they're like minus 280 to make the playoff. One of those teams I think that is heavily favored will be on the outside looking in.
I can tell you one team that definitely won't be in the mix is Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I have them under 7.5 wins. I circled that for sure when I went through everything this afternoon. I mean, look, road game at Mizzou, at LSU, at Ole Miss, all in the second half of the season. They have Bama coming to Norman. They have the Red River Shootout, and Tennessee comes to Norman as well. Their only unranked matchups in SEC play are Auburn and South Carolina. And Auburn's weird. Auburn is always the weird team in the SEC. They either stink and everybody wants to fire the coach, which happened when Brian Harsin was there, or Hugh Freeze is going to find something in this team and they're going to be that sneaky underdog, and we'll talk about them at the Iron Bowl and be like, oh, well, maybe they could beat Bama. Auburn always swings either one or the other way. There's no happy medium with Auburn football. And getting Oklahoma in September at Jordan-Hare, I mean, that's a sneaky spot to lose if you're Oklahoma, and you don't have a margin for error here. You have 6 ranked teams on your schedule. I just don't see where 8 wins comes from an Oklahoma team that, look, I think is not ready for the SEC compared to where Texas is at. I really don't. I think Mizzou over 9.5, Oklahoma under 7.5. It fits very nicely within this narrative of the SEC we're spinning.
As far as doing these shows, that's the first time Auburn's name has been mentioned. We have not had one mention of Auburn.
They're there. They're right there.
Of course,
they don't give up 4th and 31 to Milroe, and if you don't lose to New Mexico State by 3 touchdowns at home last year before that Auburn game or before the Bama game, they're 8-4. They're 9-4 last year.
They're starting 4-0. I'm just letting you know that right now.
I think they could be an 8-9 win team this year, and then next year is when all the recruits really start rolling in because Freeze has been dominating recruiting. I've seen recently. He's been
he can legally pay those guys this time.
Yep.
Yeah. We got a lot of starters coming back.
He can't legally do some of the things he did at Ole Miss. Still, no. Those things are still illegal.
Depends where you're at. There's
I mean, look, in Auburn, Alabama, anything is legal if your football team is good, right?
Right. Yep. All right, Beef, that was you on Ole Miss. Back over to Joe, and we'll stay with the win totals. And, why not? Let's do Missouri because you've already hit on it. You love them coming out of the SEC here. 9.5 is their total here. 18-1 conference, plus 180 to make the playoff. Where are you coming in with Missouri? You already told us why you're so passionate about the play, though.
I mean, did Eli Drinkwitz bribe somebody in Birmingham? I mean, look at how super cupcake soft the schedule is, man. Like they have to go at A&M, at Bama, and they host Oklahoma. And those are the preseason ranked teams they play. They're
53-point favorites I'm seeing against Murray State. Is that still the correct line?
That's probably about fair.
Ja Morant's playing QB.
They're going to need Ja Morant and campaign.
Yeah, there you go. Nice pull, boys. Nice pull. All right. Look, Missouri schedule is that's number one, but of course playmakers as well.
I mean, yeah, look, arguably the best playmaker in the country in Luther Burden. I think Drinkwitz has that program going in an incredible direction. And I mean, that schedule is as soft as the pillows you sleep on at night. I mean, where's the losses coming from other than maybe Bama? I don't think I don't know if I rank Texas A&M as high as other people. Maybe a little surprised to see them in the top 25. I think Elko's got a little bit of work to do there before they get respect, and that being October 5th noon game at College Station. That doesn't seem as intimidating as a night game where there's momentum rolling with the 12th man involved. I think Mizzou can go into College Station and win that game. So if you're looking at any true losses on the schedule, it's at Bama, and that's about it. I mean, hell, they have to go to UMass in the middle of October.
That's the weirdest game of the season.
It is the weirdest game of the season.
Yeah,
but, I mean, where are the losses coming from Missouri? Unless injuries derail them, or they just completely blow up in flames, which you can't do with this schedule. I mean, again, I just don't see where the losses are coming from. I
got them the over 9.5 at plus 135 as well. And I think they're favored. I think they're favored most likely in, if not 11, 10 games at the fewest on that schedule.
They might get the road dog tag at A&M just because it's A&M.
Mm-hmm. But the headline has a 2-point spread here, and 9 versus Alabama.
I mean, they'll be favored by November over Oklahoma at home.
So you just win all your games as a favorite. You're right. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I think that the easiest path to 10 wins in the country belongs to Missouri.
Wow, that's a statement right there. All right, and 10 wins in the SEC, Missouri's in the playoff, correct?
Oh, 100%.
All right.
But I mean, where are the losses coming from? They play all the teams that are projected to finish in the bottom half of the SEC. Like I don't think that's the I don't think it's remotely close to a bowl game.
Tough road game at A&M. You already said it, right?
Right.
Auburn's at home. Alabama, that's a tough game, of course. We already gave our talk on Oklahoma, how it's going to be a down year there. South Carolina, maybe sneaky. No. Maybe.
They show up when like Georgia or somebody shows up.
I could see Missouri's last 3 games, 2 of them being against interim coaches.
Yeah.
Wow.
At least.
Pittman goes, and if Beamer, if they really bottom out, Beamer will go. But
I mean, hell, with the way Mississippi State goes, they might just have a new coach per year at this point.
Yeah.
Beef, over to you, and I'm going to get selfish here, and then we'll talk some matchups coming up here. I got 6 premier matchups to open up shop in college football. We'll talk some spreads, and of course, get into everybody's portfolio if they have any plays for week 0/week 1. Now, Tennessee, Beef. I'm high. I like Josh Heupel. I love the offense. Lost a bunch of players. Looked good in that bowl game. Yeah, I've already made my case to believe in why I think that they're going to be a fun team. But I'm wondering if we can make some money on them. Where can we look to have action on Tennessee? Is there a play that you would recommend? Hell, are you even thinking under 8.5? To make the playoff plus 175, SEC 16-1. I'm sure we can get some action to make the championship game. Is there anything that you look at from Tennessee's perspective that we should be looking to fire on? So
when I did my breakdown for them, I actually had them at 8-4, so be under 8.5. But I kind of am in the position of what you and Mark have been saying. And I do think if Nico does take off, they will be in that conversation to make the playoff. So, I mean, if you believe in him really as your guy to be the Heisman Trophy, and he certainly can, he has the talent, and I think he's much better suited to run the system than future Patriots starting quarterback Joe Milton. But that offense takes off, they're going to be a tough team to stop and to make the playoff there at plus 170. They're in the position where the SEC could be the one conference I think that gets a 9-3 in. If your wins, you have a few really big wins, and then your losses are by a coin flip, and you maybe get that 11 spot. But Tennessee is a really tough kind of figure out for me as of right now. They're in the kind of LSU camp where it's like so many new pieces. What could happen? But they have a hell of a defense. I'll tell you that. And you think offense with Tennessee, they might have the best defensive line in the conference with Pierce at the edge rusher. He's in conversation to be the number 1 overall pick. So Tennessee's another team that's kind of a wild card for me. I'm curious to see, Joe, if you kind of have any better feel on them for me, because as of right now, they're a bit of wait and see.
Pierce had 10 sacks last year.
Say it with me. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Iamaliava.
Ooh, somebody practiced. Iamaliava.
There you go. See?
Look at that.
You can impress all your friends at the bar now.
I love it.
You will absolutely butcher.
I'm going. I need to know how to say it. I'm going this year.
Absolutely. I might buy a jersey if he wins the Heisman Trophy because I'm going to have that in play. But that's a team that I'm definitely going to be, looking to watch. Last year, of course, everybody's attention was on Colorado. I'm sure there were some other teams that we all wanted to fire up. But Texas, of course, Alabama. But man, Tennessee's hit me for some odd reason this year, and it's because
it's the bowl game. It's the bowl game bump.
And the quarterback, the quarterback looked unbelievable. The hype is there, and you realize it. All right, the hype for college football is here, and that's for a damn good reason. We have action back in our lives, boys. Next week, unbelievable. We are we've made it. Let's just put it that way. And we're going to open up shop on the 24th with the game that we've been counting down. Beef has been counting down for a long dang time. Beef, where'd you start that number, if you remember? When did the countdown begin? What number?
I did it starting at 100.
Nice. That's very nice of you, counting down to my wife's birthday every day on Twitter.
100 days.
I greatly appreciate that.
Nice work there. Florida State, Georgia Tech, 13-point spread, 56 is our total. That's a noon kickoff. Anything there for you guys? If we're going to have action on game 1, which way we looking here?
I want the over. I desperately want Georgia Tech to be half decent in that game, because the absolute last thing you want, right, is to build up to the first college football game of the season and it be just an absolute total stinker. Nebraska Northwestern wasn't exactly the best game of football, right? So I personally, just out of a want, I want this game to be good. I want this game to be high scoring. I'm buying a little bit into Haynes King at Georgia Tech. I'm looking at their win total potentially. I just want the game to be good. I don't have any real lean either way. Look, it's a whole situation, right? They're traveling to Ireland, so when this is where you laugh, but this is exactly where momentum and we're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids actually is a thing. When are these teams flying out to Dublin? I want to know that first.
All week.
I want to know how many days they're practicing in Dublin. Are they used to the field? Have they gone through everything? Are they used to the time zone? Or are they flying out, on Wednesday or Thursday? Which NFL team have they consulted to do that? I don't want to know that specifically, but these are the little things when it comes to a unique setting like this in Dublin, where I think it matters. Because if these teams are over there on Monday and are getting used to the time difference, everything kind of is a normal week, then I'd be more inclined to bet it in any capacity. But if these teams are staggered in getting over there, or if it's a Monday, Wednesday, or they're both going out on Wednesday, I don't know. I mean, look, it'll be 6 o'clock, I think, 5 o'clock in Dublin. So time, it's not a weird time. I think a lot of it depends on, to me, the little intangibles behind the scenes of when these teams are going out there and getting used to their surroundings, because a lot of that has to deal with this type of game. Not so much the NFL, they're professionals, they're used to it, but I think in college football, I think that matters just enough to me where I'm not going to make a play yet, but if I know both of those teams are over there early and getting used to things, I'll at least feel a little more confident about where it lies.
Beef, why am I thinking Florida State gets revenge for being, shafted last year, and they take it out on Georgia Tech, and 13-point spread is a gimme?
I think you're wrong. I'll go with that.
Well,
I'm
a
leaning
lot of their
more,
guys left.
Yeah, a lot of the guys that would be seeking the revenge were still picking the cleats out of their buttocks after that 63-3 defeat from Georgia. But
True.
I don't like DJ. I don't trust him. You lose Keon Coleman at receiver. You lose Johnny Wilson at receiver. You lose
Future
Benson at running
Eagles
back.
stud Johnny
Yeah.
Wilson.
You lose a lot. You're ushering in a lot of new faces, and it's not a cupcake. Georgia Tech played well down the stretch. They stole a few games from some teams. I think Georgia Tech, I'm looking at their schedule, they have one of the tougher schedules in the country this year, but I think Georgia Tech is going to be one of the top 5 teams of spoiler alerts this season. In terms of
we call those the frisky teams.
Yeah, they're just like, okay, how the hell did they beat Miami? Miami's number 5 and undefeated.
Well, I can tell you why they beat Miami. I mean, that's easy. Mario Cristobal exists.
But yeah, Georgia Tech, I think, makes us win a game. And Brace, I might have to call my shot. I'm going to have to do a little bit more, but this might be like my Duke against Clemson pick week 1 last year. I might take a little sprinkle there on the
game 1 out the chute.
Might have to start with the bang.
Love it. Let's go. All right, boys, we're up against it. Little rapid fire. We'll close up shop with this. Beef, 30 seconds. I want to hear Clemson and Georgia. Your thoughts, 14-point spread, 47.5. Anything hitting you there if I made you make a selection today?
I'll go Georgia alternate spread by 20.5. I think they blow them out of the building in Atlanta. Fading Clemson all year, every opportunity I can, and it will start at noon on ABC on Labor Day Saturday. Give me Georgia there. Georgia is a team that's going to have the revenge on their mind after last year.
Joe, Miami and Florida, 3:30 p.m. on the 31st as well. 2.5-point spread, Miami favored. If I made you make a selection, 54.5 is your total. Where are you going?
I mean, I'd have to go Miami. I mean, the morale around the Florida Gators is just at an all-time low, right? I mean,
it's game 1. They don't have a fresh feeling. It's not the new car smell this year. Like, what's going on?
I think the new car smell left after like the first game Billy Napier coached. I mean, look, it's entirely possible that they do a Florida State, right? Where Mike Norvell was on the hot seat and finally got it to click. It's entirely possible, but I think the percentage of that happening is probably like 10 or 15%. Whereas Florida State, I think, had a little more room for that improvement. Cam Ward, is Graham Mertz still at Florida? I haven't even. Okay, yeah, Cam Ward, greater than Graham Mertz, and probably like 10 more greater than signs after that.
Well, we'll get you out of here on this one. Close up shop on the final edition of Summer Ball Live here in August. And let's talk about the Fighting Irish and A&M. Point spread, essentially a pick'em game being played on the 31st at A&M. Ryan Beef Coyle, 20 seconds. Who are you going?
I'm going A&M. I really think Notre Dame is going to have some adjusting on the offensive side of the ball at the beginning of the year. Only 2 starters return. New quarterback with Riley Leonard, new OC with Mike Denbrock, and going to A&M is not going to be a game I think that you want to have to make adjustments at the line of scrimmage in a new offense in the first game. That offense could definitely use, Ball State week 1 instead of them playing them in week 4. But yeah, give me A&M in that game. Not really buying stock in them long term, but I do really like that matchup for a pretty new look Notre Dame offense.
Joe, Notre Dame, A&M, pick them.
I will say get your pillow ready. That might be a snooze game.
Really?
Like if there's one thing I know about Mike Elko, is that Mike Elko loves defense. He loves good defense. And if you're turning a team around, the first thing you're going to want to do is fix the defense. The offense will come. But I think defense powers that matchup. And look, I think it's also important to note, where did Riley Leonard play at his last stop?
Mike Elko.
Mike Elko was his head coach at Duke. So he's going to know the tendencies. Look, I feel like that game is going to be under 47. That feels pretty easy of a bet there. Look, it's tough enough for a quarterback to have all these adjustments with a new team. But in the face of defense with your old head coach, who's a defensive specialist. And what does A&M want to get back to? Playing tough defense.
All right, I'm placing the wager. All right, you got me. You talked me in. I'm in on the Aggies. Here we go.
Well, I had the under, not the Aggies.
All right. Okay.
But yeah, I would probably lean the Aggies too.
All right. I love it though. Great breakdowns across the board, boys. We're here. We got game action coming our way starting next week, and then it's off and running. And enjoy every game, every minute possible. Hopefully, we have a very successful wagering season. Look forward to doing that and covering it all right here on The Gambler. As always, anything and everything can be found at foxphlgambler.com. For Ryan Beef Coyle and Joe Tansey, I'm Sean Brace. Appreciate you listening. Good luck on those plays.